In the quiet order of her pesto home, Caroline Leavitt's life unfolded with meticulous grace. Her home office was a testament to her disciplined spirit, political documents arranged in neat stacks on her polished oak desk, her court attire, a crisp blazer and pressed blouse, carefully laid out the night before. Yet today she wasn't bound for the White House, where she wielded her sharp intellect as President Donald Trump's press secretary. Instead, a small personal matter called her to the Pesto Municipal Court, a contract dispute tied to her family's used truck dealership, a misunderstanding she was determined to unravel with her characteristic clarity. As she prepared to share the story, she paused, her voice warm and inviting. Please let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so we can share more journeys like this together. Caroline stood before her bathroom mirror, her reflection framed by soft morning light. She chose a look that softened her usual commanding presence, a tailored navy blazer hugging her frame, a white blouse glowing against her skin, and sleek black pants that spoke of understated elegance. Her natural blonde hair, a cascade she'd always cherished, was swept back with care, each strand a quiet nod to her pride. At 27, her face carried a radiant resolve, forged through years of navigating the high-stakes world beside Trump and her relentless self-study of law, piecing together legal wisdom from campaign documents late into the night. Just a quick appearance, she murmured to herself, her voice a gentle promise, as she grabbed a ripe banana and a thermal mug brimming with the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Her BMW, a gleaming symbol of her triumph in contributing to Trump's election victory, waited in the garage, a chariot of her dreams, though she sometimes caught the startled glances of strangers, marveling at a young woman stepping from such luxury. The morning traffic in Pesto crawled, but Caroline's heart was steady. She'd left ample time to reach the courthouse. The hum of NPR's morning news filled the car as she mentally sifted through her paperwork for the dispute, a clash over a truck maintenance contract where payment terms had tangled with the invoice. She'd captured every detail in photos, her evidence ready to speak. Suddenly, her car's Bluetooth chimed, the screen flashing Michael Reynolds, a senior political advisor at the White House. Her pulse quickened. His calls were rarely casual. Caroline, sorry for the early call. His voice crackled through the speakers, urgent yet warm. We've got a firestorm over the President's Gulf of America decree. The press is relentless, and I need you to review a response immediately. Her fingers tightened around the steering wheel, the weight of duty settling in her chest. The decree renaming the Gulf of Mexico was a lightning rod, and she was its voice. How long do I have? She asked, her tone calm despite the flutter in her heart. Before noon. I'm emailing the documents now. Can you call me back? Of course, she replied, her professionalism a shield, though her mind raced with the delicate dance of time. Caroline found refuge in a parking spot near a cozy coffee shop, its windows glowing with the promise of warmth. She pulled out her laptop, tethering it to her phone's hotspot, and dove into Michael's documents. The press questions were a gauntlet, each one demanding precision and legal finesse to defend the decree. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, crafting notes with the care of an artist, her determination a quiet fire. Time slipped away unnoticed until a glance at her watch sent a jolt through her. It was nearly court time, the courthouse still 10 minutes away. She called Michael, her voice steady as she shared her thoughts, promising a fuller response post-hearing. Back in traffic, her heart urged her to stay calm. She'd never been late to a briefing, never faltered in her duty. Yet the Gulf of America issue loomed, a tide that could sway millions, and her morning's response was a beacon for public perception. As she pulled into the courthouse lot, a few minutes behind, her phone buzzed with Michael's gratitude. Your quick work was perfect. Thank you for prioritizing this. A small smile curved her lips, a flicker of pride, unaware that those fleeting minutes would ignite a spark destined to change everything. Judge Edward Grayson's courtroom was a realm of unyielding order, its air thick with the weight of authority. At 62, his graying hair and wire-rimmed glasses framed a presence honed over 3 decades on the bench. That morning he sat elevated, his black robe pristine, his gaze sweeping over the bustling room, over 20 souls on wooden benches, most there for minor matters like traffic fines or contract disputes. He nodded at the early arrivals, their neat attire and punctuality a silent agreement with his code. "All rise," bellowed Bailiff Robert Hayes, and Grayson began, his efficiency a well-tuned symphony, dispatching cases with swift precision. To him, tardiness was a betrayal of the law's sanctity, a personal affront to his domain. When the courtroom door creaked open, Karoline slipped in, her steps soft, her heart racing with apologies unspoken. Grayson froze mid-sentence, his eyes narrowing on her like a storm cloud. "Step forward," he commanded, his voice a blade of ice, halting another case. Karoline approached the podium, her posture a blend of confidence and grace, though the air crackled with hostility. Grayson glanced at his schedule, his tone sharp as he pronounced, "You must be Karoline Leavitt, scheduled for the session's start." The emphasis on timing was a lash, his disapproval palpable. "Do you think your time outweighs this court's, Miss Leavitt?" Before she could speak, he pressed on, his voice rising, intent on carving her into an example. The room shifted, some spectators uneasy, others curious. Earlier, a middle-aged businessman had arrived late, unnoticed by Grayson's wrath. "In this courtroom, we have rules," he lectured, shuffling papers without a glance at her. "This isn't some White House spectacle where you waltz in as you please. This is a court of law." Karoline stood poised, her hands clasped, her gaze steady. She saw his arrogance in every gesture, his dismissal of her as a mere young woman, speaking as if she were a child. Bailiff Robert Hayes, weathered by 15 years, watched with a flicker of unease. "Your Honor, may I explain?" Karoline began, her voice a clear stream over stone. "You may not," Grayson snapped, his tone a wall, as if her words were dust. The gavel lifted, a symbol of his dominion, and the room held its breath. A young woman in a suit, late herself, sat unnoticed, the pattern of Grayson's bias clear to all but him. "This court will not abide such disregard," he declared, his face flushing as Karoline's composure challenged his reign. "Perhaps a fine will teach you punctuality." Karoline remained steadfast, her heart a quiet drum. She'd faced skepticism before, journalists doubting her youth, rivals mocking her role. But this was a deeper wound, a public abuse within the system she revered. The tension thickened. The clerk, Mrs. Margaret Evans, typing with unease, sensing the morning's true shock was yet to unfold. Grayson leaned forward, his chair creaking under the weight of his intent, sunlight casting stark shadows across his stern face. "Miss Leavitt," he proclaimed, his voice echoing, "this court fines you $500 for contempt." The amount hung heavy, one of his steepest for lateness, though he withheld that truth. Karoline stood motionless, her mind cataloging every nuance, his averted eyes, the edge of prejudice in his tone, a blend of arrogance she'd met too often. From Trump's side, she'd learned to spot self-importance masquerading as justice. Mrs. Evans hesitated, her fingers slow, noting the fine with a private scribble of doubt. Last week, a tardy attorney had earned only a mild rebuke. "Let this be a lesson in responsibility," Grayson continued, lifting a paper for show. "Without order, we'd have chaos." The room's reactions varied. The suited woman checked her watch. The elderly local shook his head. Bailiff Hayes' jaw tightened, his silent tally of injustices growing. Karoline drew a slow breath, her heart steadying. She'd faced fiercer storms, press room volleys, political fire. But this was personal, a stand for something greater. She noted the fines details on her phone, her fingers deliberate. "You'll pay this today," Grayson added, his tone mocking. "Unless you're late for that, too." Nervous chuckles faded quickly. The room taut. Sunlight bathed Karoline's face, her eyes alight with resolve a wiser judge might have feared. Years of late-night study, poring over legal texts with Trump's advisors, had sharpened her for this moment. "Do you understand?" Grayson asked, expecting submission. "Yes, Your Honor," she replied, her voice clear, each word a quiet vow. "I understand completely." Grayson nodded, smug, unaware her meticulous notes, his words, his tone, his bias, were already evidence. The room held its breath, sensing she was just beginning. When Karoline opened her briefcase, the air shifted, a tide turning. She drew out a leather-bound notebook, its pages dense with legal insights from campaign nights, sunlight catching the ink like a promise. Grayson, dismissing their exchange, reached for the next file. His mistake. "Your Honor," Caroline's voice rang, soft yet commanding, stopping the room. "Before we proceed, I must clarify something for the record." She held her notebook high, its weight a testament to her study. "I am Karoline Leavitt, White House Press Secretary, and though I stand here not as a lawyer, my legal knowledge compels me to challenge this ruling." The room stilled, Grayson's flush fading to pallor, his hand frozen. Silence deepened. The ceiling fan's hum suddenly loud. Mrs. Evans paused, her fingers hovering. Bailiff Hayes's smile, subtle but bright. This moment would linger in his memory. "I apologize for my delay," Caroline continued, her voice a steady flame. "Caused by an urgent White House matter tied to the Gulf of America decree, as Your Honor may know from the news. I have email confirmation from Michael Reynolds, which I can provide." The suited woman sank lower. The elderly local's eyes gleamed with pride. Grayson faltered, his voice unsteady. Miss Leavitt, if I'd known your role—" "My role shouldn't matter," Caroline cut in, firm yet kind. "Only fairness in the law." She set her notebook down, her phone revealing notes. "I've observed unequal treatment here today, based on age and reputation." Grayson's face paled, the room electric. "Perhaps we could discuss this privately," he stammered, "and the fine is dismissed." "No, Your Honor," Caroline said, her voice a quiet thunder. "Dismissing it now would only deepen the bias I address. This is a chance to speak of fairness." The room watched, awestruck, phones clutched despite rules. This was history. Mrs. Evans typed furiously, capturing every word. Grayson's authority crumbled, Caroline rising as a beacon of intellect. "This morning," she said, her phone in hand, 7 arrived late. 3 older professionals faced no rebuke, 2 students got warnings, but I and another young defendant bore the harshest judgment." Grayson's voice wavered. "These are serious accusations." "The evidence speaks," Caroline replied, turning to the room. "I've sent notes to my White House team. As my duty demands, I call out bias." A law student scribbled. An elderly man wiped a tear, the sunlight a spotlight on truth. "I propose 3 actions," Caroline said, her hands steady on the podium. "First, I'll pay the fine as evidence. Second, review 6 months of your contempt charges for patterns. Third, mandate bias training for all court staff, including the bench." Grayson tried to rally. "These seem extreme for tardiness." "What's extreme?" Caroline countered. "Is bias piling into barriers to justice." She drew a check from her briefcase, her voice calm. "I'll pay now, and my team will follow up." The sunlight flooded, Grayson diminished, Caroline towering. Not just a victory, but a spark for change. By afternoon, the story raced through New Hampshire, a law student's text igniting the flame. White House press secretary humbled a judge. Unbelievable. In her White House office, Caroline's phone buzzed. Colleagues shared tales of Grayson's bias, long silenced by fear. "This isn't just me," she told David Parker, her eyes on messages piling up. "It's for every quiet sufferer." In the courthouse break room, Mrs. Evans revealed her notebook, years of secret records trembling in her hands. Local news flared. Jonathan Lee outside the courthouse, reporting a statewide debate on bias. Hashtags like #LegalGenius trended, stories of Grayson's harshness flooding social media. That evening, Grayson watched the news, dread sinking in, his career unraveling. Emily Carter called Caroline. "Your voice changes everything. Will you speak tomorrow?" Court clerks found patterns. Younger defendants fined triple for the same violations. National headlines bloomed. Social media roared. Robert Hayes confided, "She didn't let it slide." Late that night, Caroline drafted a judicial report, her phone glowing with a student's thanks. "You gave us hope." A week later, the New Hampshire Judicial Conduct Committee launched a probe. Laura Bennett's team pored over Grayson's cases, uncovering stark patterns. Young defendants fined $400 on average. Older ones $120 for the same disputes. Mrs. Evans shared her notebook. Robert Hayes his notes, the evidence undeniable. Grayson questioned, seemed stunned. "I never realized." The probe grew, exposing systemic bias beyond pesto. Laura's 300-page report landed, a call for reform. 3 months later, Pesto's courthouse transformed. A Center for Judicial Training and Fairness rose. Grayson resigned but spoke at its first session, humbled. "I never saw my bias." Karoline watched. Mrs. Evans now led monitoring. Robert Hayes trained staff. Silence was over. In her White House office, Karoline framed her fine receipt, a symbol beside a photo of her with law students she now taught. New rules, bias training, audits, oversight, spread across New Hampshire. A student's letter arrived. Her path shifted to social justice law, inspired by Caroline Stan. The elderly local saw new signs, felt fairness at last. A plaque in the courthouse lobby read, "Justice is how we treat each person," marking Caroline's spark. Her story mirrors America's fight against bias, her intellect flipping the script, urging all to wield knowledge and courage for a fairer world. Join us for more stories of triumph, Caroline's voice echoed, warm and resolute, and let's keep shining light together.